What is up, everybody? What is up, fanatics? It is Game Fanatic Cook here, and today we're going to be talking about great swords in Monster Hunter Rise. And basically what got me on this topic is because I was doing research for what's the worst monster to fight in Monster Hunter, and everybody was just shitting on the Gyarados, the fish thing in the mud. Anyway, that's not important right now. Basically, it got me thinking about being a tier whore, and I'd be like, what's the best weapon? What's the worst weapons? So I did some research on what people generally think the best and worst weapons on Monster Hunter are, and basically everyone was saying the light bow gun, dual blades, and I think the longsword was the unanimous top 3 from what I've seen. And I don't really use any of those weapons, so I'm like, well, god damn it. Anyway, I used to main the great sword in Monster Hunter 3, and in Monster Hunter 4 I used the great sword as well. And then in Rise, I've used it a little tiny bit on my Switch version, which is why I'm much farther in, and I haven't really touched it at all on computer. So I decided, I'm going to make a video about, really thinking about the Greatsword and its viability in the current state of Monster Hunter, especially with how fast-paced and quick Monster Hunter has gotten in recent years, especially with Rise. And while I was going through these articles, reading about people's opinions on the Greatsword, going through Reddit, a lot of people said, while it is really slow and probably one of the lower tier weapons, it does obviously have really high damage. It does do good cutting against limbs, and with the wire bugs, you're able to close distance quicker with it and get good damage aerial attacks and stuff like that. So I made sure to test out the aerial attacks a lot. I used wire bugs a lot for ability purposes, particularly in this video while I was testing it out. And I just tested out my Greatsword. I am in low rank, I believe. I am fighting a Alderaan, Mitsuine, and Tobi Kadachi in this video. I am using the Wyvern Fang 1 Greatsword with 150 damage, and it does 27 dragon damage on top of that. And I played Monster Hunter a while. It's been like a couple weeks, and I'm just going to go and roll with this Greatsword. Let's see how I do. It used to be my main. So yeah, why fighting these different monsters I did choose fast monsters on purpose to really push the Greatsword and look at its weaknesses. And first off, the first thing I really want to just debunk is people saying that the wire bugs have actually improved the Greatsword. From an attacking standpoint, I really have to heavily disagree. As you can see many times throughout this gameplay, the Greatsword, when you use the wire bug, if you hit the monster, there's such a long pickup time after you land a blow. Once you hit the ground after a wire bug attack, an aerial attack with the Greatsword, there's a 2-second window, maybe not 2 seconds, but at least a second and a half, where you're just picking the sword back up and getting back in position. And I got hit 5 times just from doing that shit. So I would say attacking from the air with the wire bug with your Greatsword maybe don't really do if the monster is being particularly aggressive, because from what I could tell, it really only set you up for failure. Maybe I was doing it in the wrong positions, but wire bug and Greatsword really don't mix. And the same thing with just jumping off your dog and striking. Basically any aerial attack with the Greatsword, unless it stumbles the monster, or the monster is in a tired panting mode, you're probably going to get hit if the monster is targeting you. It's just kind of dog shit, if I'm being honest with you. So I really don't agree with that take, saying the wire bug makes it better. It does help close distance as long as you don't attack. So basically, if you're using a Greatsword, do not use the wire bugs to attack. Don't do that. Aerial attacks are bad with the Greatsword, which logically it makes sense, but you don't play Monster Hunter for the logic. You don't use weapons for the logic. And that's just, weird. That's where they choose to implement a little bit of logic there. Anyway, so that's dog shit. I just wanted to talk about that first. Still with the Greatsword, you always have to sheath after an attack, generally. Unless the monster is sitting still or you're getting some good combos, you always have to sheath after using a Greatsword attack. That has been this Greatsword strategy as far as I've known since the first monster, since Greatswords existed. I remember in 3, after every attack, I would just sheath it and then attack again, because generally that did more damage with the 2 overhead attacks than the overhead and the circle slash usually does. So, pretty much sheath it in between every attack, and plus usually the monster is going to counter after your first attack anyway, so it's good just to pick it up so you have better options to dodge or run away, or just run towards the monster. Another bad thing about the greatsword, which I actually don't remember in Monster Hunter 3, is that now once you do the overhead attack, particularly, once again, your overhead attack, there's like a second there where you actually can't dodge at all. And you're kind of just stuck there. You can't, as soon as the sword hits the ground, you can't dodge like you could in Monster Hunter 3. You're actually forced to pick it up before you're able to dodge. Which honestly just makes, in my opinion, I mean, and logically, I think most people would agree, the greatsword even less viable and even worse, especially in how fast-paced Monster Hunter Rise is. Slowing down your dodge and purposely making frames, and obviously every attack you can't just immediately dodge after attacking with every weapon, but particularly with the greatsword and also with the hammer when I used it when you do the overhead hammer strike. But we're talking about the greatsword right now. There's a pretty big window to where you can't dodge afterwards, and I feel like they expanded that or extended that in Rise, and that really kind of makes the greatsword even more dog in that case. And yeah, so that's the wire bug aerial attacks. You're going to get hit when you just do the overhead strike with the greatsword. There's a good chance you get hit just because you can't immediately dodge after doing it. And again, maybe it's just because I'm not used to using the greatsword on Rise, but I do remember being able to dodge quicker in older games after an attack. The shield that you get with the greatsword, why in desperate situations or when the monster's just doing one of their basic weak attacks, I mean, it's a fine option. It is a bonus. So I've never really met anyone that's used the greatsword shield a whole lot, because if you want slow gameplay, why you can, with high defense, you'll just use the lance. I've just seen people use I've seen most people just dodge when using the greatsword, especially since its shield isn't really all that great. If a monster hits you with a real hard attack, it's just going to destroy your stamina bar and usually fuck you. But if a monster's just like doing a little wiggle or shake, or just like a little kick, maybe even a tail whip, then the shield works out fine. I want to use it a couple times in this video because, like I said, I've just never really used the greatsword shield, but I did purposely use it a few times in here, especially against the Mitsuine, and particularly the bubbles, which it was useful and guarding against. But other than that, the shield is kind of mid. I feel like most people agree with that. And if you really want a shield, just use the sword and shield, or the lance, which is the best shield in the game. Even though the lance itself, maybe we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the lance a different time. So really, when it comes down to the greatsword, there's not really many positives I'm giving it, and that's because honestly there isn't that many positives. But we will go over those now. Obviously, greatswords deal the highest damage of any weapon off rip, which they better because they're so goddamn slow. So if you like damage, that's good. But also with how much faster most other weapons strike, they can usually make up the damage that you get with the greatsword, making it kind of pointless. They are good for cutting off tails, and I think wings is cutting damage. I'm not sure, but I think you slice wings, I want to say. So they do really high cutting damage. They will injure the monster, sever the monster's tail quickly, will, I believe, damage the wings very quickly. But obviously, just like how the hammer is good for the head and armor and shit like that. So that's what I think people would use them for. So if a monster, cutting off tails is overrated, if I'm being honest. I feel like it doesn't gimp the monster as much as people think. Like, especially when I was fighting the Alderaan, I cut off its tail, part of it, but it could still use all its normal tail attacks. So it's like, what really was the fucking point? Which I think is a shame. But it's like, that kind of makes the greatsword worse. I feel like in Monster Hunter 3, the greatsword, when you cut off something's tail, it would significantly worsen their ability to attack. Like, if you cut off the Rathalos' tail or the Rathian's tail, now you're not getting poisoned with its tail. Obviously, it still has the talons. If you cut off the Devil Joe's tail, it just has a way shorter range for its whip, and so on. And cutting off the tail felt like something that really helped. But like in Rise, from fighting the Mitsuine and the Alderaan, cut off both of their tails, and honestly, it really felt like the fight barely changed because of it. Especially with the Alderaan, which it just cut off it hit the very tip of the tail, and I feel it was pretty much pointless. So cutting off tails is overrated in my opinion, and not a good enough reason to really bring a greatsword in a party of 4. And then the final reason I have for using why you might want to use the Great Sword, is because it looks fucking awesome. The Great Sword is, first off, the coolest looking weapon. I mean, the Great Swords are the coolest looking weapons in the game. If we're just keeping it at 100, that is why I used to main a Great Sword. That is why I was interested in making this video, is because Great Swords look fucking sick. They're awesome. They're iconic. They're the weapon associated with Monster Hunter. And yeah, using something because it looks cool is completely viable, in my opinion. A completely viable reason. And Great Swords look fucking awesome. And on top of that, they're pretty fun to use, I would say, just like feeling the impact of the weapon, seeing how high those numbers get, using your charge attacks. I just say they're a really fun weapon to use, and when you do dodge an attack and land a Great Sword hit, it feels just that much more special because it is harder to do, and you know, I just feel like it's a really fun weapon to use. And like it's it's almost a shittiness, not saying it's a terrible, like every weapon is viable in Monster Hunter Rise because it is a pretty easy game, but it's just like the Great Sword's almost not, it's like not high tierness, makes you feel even greater when you land awesome hits with it and shit like that, because just how cool it looks and how tough it feels. And unfortunately, the aerial attacks feel fucking awesome to do, and they look awesome to do with the Great Sword. It's just such a terrible thing to do because it just fucks you with how long it takes you to recover from an aerial attack with the Great Sword, but they look awesome. So overall, I obviously have only really went in depth on the Great Sword here, thinking about how good weapons are, and just offer up right now, if I had to rate the Great Sword, I'd probably say it's a fucking like D tier weapon. The only thing I could think of that could possibly be worse is maybe the Lance, I guess. But even then, it's like I haven't used the Lance enough to really tell you. I just know it's not that fun to use. But I mean, you can have fun with the Lance for sure if you use it a certain way, but generally it's not that fun to use. So I would say Great Sword is pretty low on the tiers if I had to choose, but it's definitely one of the coolest weapons. I'm glad it's in the game. I would encourage everyone to be a Great Sword main, just because we'll look sweet doing it. But yeah, that's my honest opinion on the Great Sword. Let me know what you guys think below. I have tried to pad out this video as long as possible because my gameplay was like 24 fucking minutes. And I didn't record gameplay audio because I didn't think it was going to be that long. But idiotically, I'd like to add, I thought my quest was to hunt an Alderaan and Mitsuine, when actually it was just to hunt the Mitsuine and the Tobi Kadachi. I just got completely sidetracked by the Alderaan, which I'm glad I did because it helped me get a better understanding of the Great Sword. But I didn't have to kill it, and I didn't mean to kill it. That was just because I was an idiot. Anyway, let me know what you guys think of the Great Sword in the comments below. Once again, I think it's a fun weapon. Everything's viable in Monster Hunter Rise, so I wouldn't say it's not viable, but I also definitely wouldn't say it's your best option, especially since I just recently got into using bowguns in Monster Hunter Rise. I use a heavy bowgun most of the time. While I haven't experienced the apparent wonders of the small bowgun, the heavy bowgun is a fucking sin, I feel like, to use, because every quest I do is over in like 5 minutes. I'm even using like a mid-heavy bowgun. It's like, I feel like it's not even like the best tier bowgun I could currently get, but it just shits on everything. Every monster I fight, it shits on. I'll just sit there and just let the monster hit me, and I'll just like go back and get knocked back and just start shooting again with the bowgun. I mean, bowguns are so fucking good. Anyway, it's about Great Swords. But yeah, that's my thoughts on it. Thank you guys for watching. It's been Game Fanatic Cook. I know we got a little bit off topic a couple times, and the intro was a little bit long-winded, but that's because I was whoring for more time, because the gameplay was 24 minutes, and I get to use 15 minutes of it now, based on this recording time, as long as I wait for 30 more seconds, which I am talking to. There's no reason for me to want to have a longer video. There's absolutely no point, and I benefit nothing from it because, you know, I'm a small channel, we're not getting paid or anything, but for some reason I feel like I want to end at 15 minutes because that just feels better than 14 minutes and 40 seconds. You know what I'm saying, guys? And plus, I feel like I was slaying that Mitsuine, guys. That shit was so smooth. Rewatched me killing that Mitsuine, bro. I was smoking his ass. Anyway, have a good one. Peace out, guys. Stay blessed. I didn't stop it.